this evening. Would everybody please stand and turn over here for the posting of colors, please? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Present. On.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. On.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you all for being here this evening, in particular to all the participants, especially Reverend Boyer, Father Saporito, and Rabbi Segal for being here to comfort and solace tonight. It is an honor and privilege to be with you, to remember that fateful day 17 years ago, when our nation was so brutally attacked and nearly 3,000 of our fellow Americans, including 12 of our friends and family from Westfield, lost their lives. Like previous generations who never forgot where they were during the attack on Pearl Harbor or the assassination of President Kennedy, we will always remember where we were on 9/11, when we first heard of the planes going into the World Trade Center, Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and watched, in horror, the aftermath and destruction. Like so many of you, I will never forget how beautiful it was that Tuesday morning. Crystal clear blue sky, cool temperatures, picture-perfect day. Like many of those we remember today, I had dropped my young kids off at school and spent my morning commute in the city thinking about the promise of a new school year and Giants football season. Just a short time later, I watched the towers come down from the windows of my Midtown office, staring in disbelief at what I was witnessing, but unable to comprehend the magnitude of our shared loss. I was fortunate enough to catch one of the first trains that left the city that day, so focused on getting home to Kip and my kids in Westfield that I remained unaware of the scale of the tragedy unfolding around me, and was certain that everyone got out of the tower safely. It wasn't until I finally got home that evening did I comprehend how deeply our nation and our beloved community had been wounded. I remember getting the calls and hearing the whispers about neighbors that hadn't been heard from, kids who hadn't been picked up from daycare, and tearful family members who were waiting desperately at the Westfield train station for loved ones who never came home. The day left us numb and speechless because we simply could not believe an attack like this could happen on our soil, and our hearts ached for those taken from us. But in the hours, days, and weeks following this unspeakable tragedy, we witnessed the best of America and the best of our community. We will never forget the courage of first responders, police and firefighters, who risked their own lives to save strangers. And we keep these incredible people in our prayers today as they continue to experience many health-related issues related to the attacks. Today and every day, we hold our brave servicemen and women around the world close to our hearts as they protect all Americans from ongoing global threats. And closer to home, we remain grateful for the Westfield first responders represented here today, police, fire, and rescue squad, for their dedication to keeping our community safe. We will never forget that in the years since 9/11, despite their sorrow, family members have started scholarships, memorials, and fundraisers in honor of their loved ones so that thousands of Americans can benefit in the future. These resilient family members have channeled their anguish into action, and we see it reflected in the legacy of our Westfield friends and neighbors who perished that day. We see it in the resiliency of the 18 children they left behind. These kids, now adults, which is hard to believe, have certainly been inspired by the strong moms and family members that raised them. Surely, they are driven to make every minute count and are destined to make their marks on the world. Their contributions, born out of their role in our nation's history that they never wanted to be part of, are the legacy we want to be remembering for many years to come. For those who lost family members during 9/11, I can only imagine the grief and suffering you're experiencing. Nothing we say here today can ease your pain. Just know that we in Westfield will always remember. Andrew J. Alamino. David O.T. Campbell. Michael A. Davidson. Dean P. Epperly. Stephen Mark Fogel. Thomas Glasser. Leo Russell Keem III. Richard B. Madden. John Pepe Salerno. C. Wong Shum. Anthony Starita. James Walsh. To the survivors of 9/11 and those who lost loved ones, never forget that your fellow Westfield residents will always be by your side. You will forever be a part of this community, regardless of where your path may take you. In Westfield, we will always take care of our own. May God continue to bless you and look over you, and may God bless this great community and the United States of America. Thank you. I'd now like to bring up Reverend Dr. Mark Boyer, Senior Minister at First Congregational Church, for a prayer of commemoration.
Good evening. Remember, I am with you until the end of the age. That's the last thing that Jesus tells his closest followers in the Gospel of Matthew from the Christian Bible. Remember. But why? And specifically for us, why today? Why again today? It's been 17 years. Do we really need to do this again? Do we really need to go back to that day again? Do we really need to risk tearing at the hearts of the families and those closest to those who were lost that day by gathering like this again? Do we really need to do it in such a public community way? Oh, yes. Yes, we do. And we do for three vital spiritual reasons. We do because to remember in this way is an act of hope. It is an act of hope in that we once again declare that while things will never be the same for the families and those closest to the ones whose lives were taken, never the same for this community or the New York metropolitan area, never the same for this nation, the violence, the evil, the pain, and the suffering caused by that day 17 years ago will not have the last word. Through the love and care of others, through the power of God's spirit of compassion, healing, and justice, and through the act of community remembrance, things can and will be better. Rather than being anchored by the past, we instead become rooted in it, connected to it in a way that makes it possible to rise up and stand stronger. To rise up. We do need to remember, because to remember in this way is also an act of rising up, an act of resistance. We remember because moral amnesia is far more costly than any cost remembering might inflict on us. Because moral amnesia, when it comes to the capacity for inhumanity, is the soil which gives that inhumanity another opportunity to emerge in the world, for it to emerge in new forms, or for old inhumanities to be revived in new clothes, as we have seen more and more in recent times, because we have failed to remember atrocities like slavery and the Holocaust honestly and continually. And we do need to remember, because to remember in this way is an act of love. Because it says to those family members and those closest to the victims of 9/11, you are not alone. We are with you. Whether it is through physically being present with you as you continue with your lives, or with you through our collective spiritual conscience. And so remember, we are with you until the end of the age. And for that we say, Amen.
Now I'd like to introduce Father Saporito from St. Helens.
And so I invite you through this prayer to do as Dr. Boyer suggested, to remember. To remember not only September 11th, but where we stand today as a nation and people. And so let us bow our heads and pray. We remember the first time we heard the news. We recall the first time we saw those images. We remember the way our thoughts and prayers were with those families who lost loved ones. Our thoughts and our prayers are with them again today, and especially with those from our beloved town of Westfield. We remember those who survived. We recall their heartbreaking stories. We remember that their lives are forever scarred by those moments. We remember the pain we felt. We recall the bereavement and bitterness of the aftermath. We remember how hate seemed so reckless. We remember how hate caused so much destruction. Help us, O God, to pursue peace and love with a renewed determination and resolve. We remember how our police, Port Authority personnel, firefighters, and first responders ran in to help that day amidst many dangers. We remember how we all took comfort in offering service and hope for each other in the days that followed. Help us, O God, to respect those who protect our safety always, and open our American heart of love to all. We remember how we all came together despite the pain. We remember how our differences became so small. Help us, O God, again now to recover that sense in our country. Amen.
And now I'd like to introduce Rabbi Doug Sago from Temple Emmanuel.
In Israel, in Jerusalem, the memorial to the victims of the Holocaust is called Yad Vashem, which means the monument of a name. So why is it called the monument of a name? Because in the Bible, names are important. If you know the name of someone, you know their essence. You know who they are, the deeds they performed. If you know someone's name, you know them. That's why when Jacob wrestles with an angel, the angel refuses to tell Jacob his name, and why Jacob himself receives a new name when he's blessed. In the Bible, names are everything. For too many who lost loved ones on that terrible day 17 years ago, names are all they have. That's why a day like today is so important. As we read the names of those lost, we remember them. The lives they lived, the deeds they performed, the values that they held, live on in their names, carved on these markers in front of us. They bear the names of our loved ones, but they bear more than that. They bear the memories we share of them, the stories we tell, what they mean to us even today. May the names of these men before us, and the names of those who join them in death on that day, always be a blessing for us all. Amen.
Now we'll have a fireman and a policeman lay the ceremonial wreath. And now for taps.
Carry color. Present. On. Order. On.
Now for the singing of God Bless America. Now let's just take a minute for a bit of silent reflection and think about the words that we've heard here today. Thank you for everybody coming out this evening. It's a great example of our community support and spirit. Really appreciate it. Have a good evening.